Hey fam, welcome back. Tisha here, back for another Love and Marriage Huntsville review. The last couple minutes of this episode has me like all over the place. So before I forget to ask, down in the comments section, are we Team Marceau or Team Martell at the end of the episode? Let me know. Do me a favor, hit the like button as we jump into it. If there's something that I don't mention that you want to discuss, feel free to put it down below. So, we begin this episode with Mel and Kimmy meeting up at her house, Mel's house, to catch up. Mel says that after her event, she realized not only how long it's been since both the men and the women attended something of hers together, but how long it's been since she invited Kimmy to over at her house. So Kimmy is at the house and they use this time to play catch up. Kimmy brings up Martell's event and how it came out at the event that Chris is who created the space and the communication to happen between Trish and Martell. That she feels like, Chris denied it, but he facilitated it in some kind of way. And she was surprised about it considering the dynamic that Chris is supposed to have with Mel. So she is. Mel is surprised by all of this, especially because it wasn't mentioned to her by Nell the other day when they went out wedding dress shopping, which I don't quite understand why Mel didn't just let her know just in case. But Kimmy's here to do a job, which is to carry Bones this episode. So Mel says, I really shouldn't be surprised about this whole thing because Chris was Martell's mentor and he also is a cheater. That's going to bite Mel later on because Nell isn't going to like that. She's talking crap about her husband, regardless if it's a fact or not. It's a dig. She's not going to like it. So Mel says, at this point, I'm going to have to, figure things out for myself. So Kimmy brings up Trish and how she feels like Trish feels a way about Mel because of something that was done at the party. And Mel's like, I don't know what was done at the party. I don't know why she would be calling me messy because the mess was brought to me. I walked into her children's party, congratulating them, bringing checks in hand for her kids. I didn't come there to worry about what she had going on with her circle of men. Another dig. Mel feels like if anybody should feel away, if anybody should be calling anyone messy, it should be her because Trish was messing with a man that she was married to despite her trying to act like she wasn't. Mel basically is saying that there's an overlap there. No one believes that these two are innocent and they all believe something was going on. So now Mel's like, oh, she wants to sit there and say that about me. Well, now I officially don't like her. I don't disagree with Mel in that moment. I feel like she has every reason to feel a way about the situation because the whole way she came on the show was messy and the story has changed so many times with Trish and Ken that at this point I get irritated whenever I see them on my screen. So we see Tisha meet up with her girl, as she says it, Destiny, to basically get tricked into meeting Martell. I think that Tisha handle herself in a really, really good way because it could have went left and she didn't allow it to. She didn't give Martell his moment. So we see them talking and drinking and getting ready to eat as Martell approaches and lets us know that Destiny shared she was meeting up with Tisha. And at the last minute, he decides to pop up. Destiny didn't just share that she was meeting with Tisha. She gave you her location, or production gave the location. Which one is it, for you to approach Tisha and have this conversation? He tells us that he wants to have this conversation. He wants to pop up because he feels like an apology needs to come from Tisha, from him, or from the both of them. When Tisha sees him, when he comes and sits down at the table next to Destiny, Tisha cannot get up fast enough. She immediately gets up, says that she's not about to sit here and eat with the enemy without her husband present. The girl doesn't pay for the check. She doesn't grab a doggy bag, nothing. She grabs her purse and she vacates the scene. She tells us that she's angry and upset, and it's going to be a cold day in hell before she sits across the table from Martell without her husband present. Good for Tisha. If this is the boundary that she's deciding to put up now, then that's her boundary. After seeing the way that Martell has acted and changed narratives over the years, I don't blame her for moving this way. She says, you are not about to sit there and disrespect me and then think I'm going to be okay with it. And I don't blame her. I personally am not going to sit at a table with you after you've called me all types of hoes and accused me of sleeping with this man and that man, and you were supposed to be arguing with my husband and thinking that it's okay to spray me. I personally would have got up as well. And production is foolish for thinking that she was going to sit there. So Destiny is over there talking to him at the table after Tisha left. She does not follow behind Tisha. She does not call Tisha or anything that we see. Instead, she lets Tisha leave out. And she tells him, you wanting to give an apology, I'm going to give you credit for that. She's just not ready to receive it. Nor would you have been. If the roles were reversed and something was done like that to you, Destiny, you wouldn't have wanted to receive it either. So he talks about how he's tried to be nice to people and all these other things. And I just don't feel like that's the case. And I don't understand why Destiny is inserting herself so much in what he has going on. It's kind of given like Destiny only has so much that she's willing to give. So because of that, we're going to help Martell in any capacity that we can. Because at this point, especially now, who's going to film with him? So Tisha doesn't even change her outfit. She leaves from that site to go to one of the work sites where her husband is at. And she tells him, like, while I was having lunch with Destiny, Martell walks in. And I decided, to leave. I told him I'm going to have no conversation with my husband present, and I walked off. And Marcel was like, thank you for leaving and for not being put in harm's way, because it's hard for me to protect you from him without being around. Martell doesn't know how to restrain himself, nor have the appropriate responses when it comes to women. I get what he's saying, and I completely agree. But I want to understand, at what point did we come to this conclusion? Was it before or after all the things that have transpired over the years with Mel? Because Mel told us that this is what he does. We witnessed it. We saw it firsthand. We saw when can't remember if it was in Vegas, but in one of their trips, he was going after Mel, like he was approaching her, and they had to step in, Marceau, and push him away. So was it before or after that first lunge at her, or the many attempts that he tried to pick with her? Like, why are we just now realizing that this is what he does to women? So we see Destiny. She goes fishing while she's talking to her father, who we're reminded raised her. We're told more about their dynamic, which is that he ended up getting custody for Destiny while her mother was battling addiction. At some point, she was in foster care, and he fought for her, got her. When he first got her, it was rough. It was a rough start because there was an adjustment with that. and because once he had her, he uprooted her and moved her to a different location. But she says she's just so happy now to be raised by her father, and he is just happy to have her as a daughter and to have their dynamic, and to have her son as a grandson. She's fishing with him, and he's happy to be out in the fresh air. And she talks about how scary it was around Christmas time because he was in the hospital for almost a month and it was hard on her. But now that he's out, she's glad that she's able to put certain staff in place to make sure he's good. I don't know if she's paying for that or if she did this through insurance, but either way, she's presenting it as if it's something that she arranged. So he's like, you don't have to worry about me and all those other things. And they talk, and it is a sweet scene. Destiny, we find out, is doing another launch party for Madani. She's using Lance to help her. So we are now at her storage unit. Lance is there because he's going to be putting up drywall in the storage unit as well as doing some lights and stuff. So Kimmy shows up, and Kimmy didn't even know that you could do all this in the storage unit. And she's like, yeah, you see what they've done, downstairs. Is it frugal? Yes. I just want her to call it what it is. So Kimmy's talking about how great one of the fragrances are that she won at the event and how much compliment she gets on it. Tisha shows up as well. They claim that they're proud of Destiny and her, getting back up. I'm guessing it must have been hot in the storage space because they take their conversation from being upstairs in the privacy of her unit to going downstairs on the sidewalk to talk. Kimmy continues to be messy by bringing up the various things in the events that transpired that she knows Destiny was not invited to. She brings up Mel's event and how it was nice and how everybody, was there with the exception of Tisha and Destiny, and how she was shocked that Destiny didn't get an invitation. And Destiny's like, yeah, I mean, she acted like we were okay, and then she went and talked about me on the internet. Destiny, you talked about her first, and whenever she talked about you, to my knowledge, it was prior to y'all filming that. They talk about Sonny being there and Moses being back in jail. Destiny smirks a little bit, but I don't know if it was editing or if she smirked in that moment for real. Either way, she says that she feels bad for Moses. She wanted them to go back and to go away, but she didn't want to be because of him being locked up. She says that, enough of that talk. I want to let y'all know I'm going to be throwing Nell a bachelorette party. Interesting that of all people, it's going to be her, not someone else, not Mel, but okay. I guess because you're, conversing with her son that you've decided you wanted to do this. And they're like, okay, you're going to invite everybody. And she's like, yeah, everybody can come but Sonny. Everybody but Sonny's allowed to come. And they're like, well, what if, Nell wants to invite her? And she's like, well, she shouldn't want to invite her. She doesn't even know her. She only met her once. So despite all of the drama at the past events, she's hoping that the ladies and her can have a good time at her Madani event. Kimmy says that she hopes that this relaunch party goes well and it's a demure experience because at a lot of the events that Destiny has, something always transpires and we get flashbacks. It seems like something happens at all y'all events though, but we're going to leave that alone. So we see Mel meet up with Chris to grab some popcorn and talk about Trish. She tells him that during her lunch meetup with Kimmy, that it was stated that he's the one that connected Martell and Trish back in 2020. One thing about Mel is going to say dates because Mel wants to prove a point. So Chris says it's a lie. I haven't hooked him up with anyone. Gives the same story about the gym situation and him finding the picture and him sending it to Chris asking like, is this her and all these other stuff. And he says, look, the conversation that I had with him was just men talking. It wasn't me trying to set him up. Mel says, okay, when I left in April of 2020, he told me that the older men told him not to mess around with anybody who doesn't have anything to lose and to make sure they get a contract signed. So given the new information she's received, she's wondering if one of those older men is Chris, if Chris is one of the old heads that said it. And Chris is like, I didn't say that. That don't have anything to do with me. That sounds like something that, Marceau or Maurice would say. Way to throw them under the bus. Not what he would say. He's like, look, I've been married for over 30 years. I don't have time for that. So Mel says, at one point you had time for that. He's like, yeah, I was in my 20s. Mel says that people can change, but it's not too far-fetched for her to wonder and to ask his role, especially given, the circumstances. I don't disagree with her in that. He says that he's not offended and he's just glad that she asked him face to face. He brings up the vow renewal and she was supposed to respond to it 2 days prior, but she didn't respond to it. She tells him, look, I didn't respond to it yet because I wanted to see what your response was going to be to this conversation. So now that I know what your response is, I'm going to respond immediately and say I'm going to go. I knew that this would be an issue once she said it. Now, in her face, he doesn't act like it's a problem, or at least they don't show it to us. Instead, he is on the confessional couch and he tells us that Mel waiting to hear his response is some BS because her coming or not shouldn't have anything to do with whether or not she would come to the vow renewal, especially if she has nothing else to do with Martell. I personally disagree, and y'all tell me what you think. To me, if you created a space as my friend for my husband, whether we're together anymore or not, to cheat on me, I would want to know that information too. Everyone is trying to act like Mel is so wrong for wanting to know this information and that she's still pining after this man after they're done. But to me, that's not the case. Do I think that she needs to know the ins and outs of everything? No, I don't. However, as a woman that's been cheated on, sometimes you want to know certain things because you've been wondering all this time what's what, and it feels refreshing to be able to connect the dots. So maybe this just allows her to connect those dots. So it's time for the home and body fragrance launch. Everyone shows up but Mel. I don't even know if Mel was invited because it's Destiny's thing. Marceau says that at this point, he knows that Martell is going to be there and he hopes that Martell got everything off his chest. So Destiny comes out, gives a speech. Then they gather on the rooftop, men in one area, women in another. We found out that prior to all this stuff, that Nell had a conversation with Kimmy. Kimmy's carrying a lot of different bones because she don't have anything else to do. We've heard all about her cancer and her not having sex. Now she's having sex and she don't want to talk about her husband. So Kimmy's going to carry bones in other ways. So apparently Nell must have said that she wanted everybody to come to her bachelor party and invite everyone, bachelorette party, including Sonny. She says, look, I don't like what Sonny did, but I'm not going to judge her, on it. I need to judge her for myself. It's not my battle to fight. And Destiny says, okay, I understand that you want her there and I'll just have to understand you wanting there. But now I need to assess how my relationship is going to be with you moving forward because she cannot accept the loyalty that she's giving others when they aren't giving it to her. Interesting how the roles reverse when it comes to Destiny's needs, because she has certain expectations of her friends, yet she finds it wrong when her friends, example Mel, has certain expectations of her, because one of the reasons why her and Mel fell out was because of how close she got to Tisha and the things that she overheard her saying to Tisha, as well as the part that she played in Martell and the ex and her communicating with the side piece and all those other things. So Destiny sometimes doesn't do the very things that she's asking of others. Nell isn't feeling her response. Trish asks if there's going to be any tea bags, which apparently are males wearing thongs, because she doesn't want to see that. She much rather see women there. I'm not surprised by this at all, that that's how she feels. Over to the guys, we find out that Lance and Destiny have been hanging out because they've both been married and divorced. Apparently, Lance is on his second marriage, his second divorce, both of which he said lasted for 2 years. To me, that would mean that you need to take some time for yourself. It's the reason why your mom doesn't want you to rush into any relationships, and this may be part of it. So Ken uses this time to then talk about how, most people are moving on from their marriages before it's over. And he questions the guys, and some of them are like, I can't relate to this, gotta go. So he doesn't understand the issue with him and Trish doing it. Me personally, I feel like the problem is you're bringing it to the television. I feel like the other problem is y'all aren't being honest about it because you've told so many different stories about how you all have gotten together. He brings up Martell and how it was before him, so he doesn't care. And the Scott brothers both find it odd, especially because she lied about it originally. They feel like it just leaves room for more and more lies. I think that it does too. I think that a lot of what Trish says is a lie, but I think Ken is a liar as well. Now, Ken claims he'd only be hurt by losing the relationship with her kids, not necessarily with her. But then in that same breath, when the guys are looking at him like he's crazy, he says he loves her to death. The Scott men feel like Ken is on some BS, as do some of the others, but the Scotts seem to be more vocal. They don't understand why he's trying to convince them differently. We then see Marceau walk over with his sunglasses on, even though it's dark outside, to his wife, and the ladies disperse. As they're talking, he accidentally breaks a glass, and Martell decides to join them. Tisha says that he keeps just popping up and that she wants to leave, but Marceau, wants Tisha to stay. I feel like part of the reason why he wanted Tisha to stay is because this was Marceau's moment to flex. Like, look, you don't have a woman standing beside you, but here's my woman sitting here looking beautiful beside me. Martell says that this is just a typical narcissistic move, that, he has to control his wife by forcing her to stay and, be in a convo amongst men. Used to do that very thing. Interesting how now it's different because he's doing it. So he claims that he wanted to have a conversation to see what got this to this point. And Marceau takes off his sunglasses because he wants him to see that he's serious. And he's like, we got into this point because you keep on saying that you have stuff on me and possibly my brother that you're holding. Say whatever it is that you have to say and get it off your chest, or stop doing it, because you don't realize the gravity of your words. I think that in the years of watching this show, and when Mel and her husband used to say various things, well, her husband at the time used to say various things about the Scotts, it very, very much so affected Tisha. I think that there's a lot that has gone on off screen with these two people that we have not seen. I think at some point they may have even been kind of moving separately, because I'm noticing their body language and it just seems a little bit different. There's more embracing and more tender moments with them. Even though sometimes he still speaks to her inappropriately, there's a little bit of tenderness here and there with them that I haven't seen in a long time. He says these things that have been said affect our marriage. He says the things that I say don't affect your marriage, and they shouldn't affect your marriage. But it did. And I just don't get why he doesn't get that. All right. Okay, I said that already. Martell then brings up Mel and the things Tisha and Mel went through and how that could have affected his marriage. And Tisha says, let's be clear. Mel was saying the things that she was saying because you were feeding Mel things. You were feeding her stuff about my husband. And Marceau stops her. Now, I don't know if he stopped her because he didn't want anything to be exposed, or if he stopped her because he didn't want to give Martell the battle that he seemed to have wanted. So Martell tells us that, this is why I try to keep things that, me and Marceau may have done in the past, with women's secret. The people that, we've done in the past, the people that we may have shared, him after me, of course, but we shared them. And I try to keep it, in the back somewhere, but he keeps pushing my buttons and he wants me to, to go through things and to say these things. I think that he wants to push my buttons, and I think he wants me to say it because he doesn't want to be married. I was like, oh wow. Oh wow. I think that he does want to be married. I think that he wants to do his dirt and be married, but I think he wants to be married. He says, I just feel like, Marceau, you may want to tread lightly. And because of the things you've done, I'm feeling like you don't care about your marriage. He says, no, it's not that I don't care about my marriage. It's that we no longer care about your words. So feel free, because you think you have something to say that can damage my marriage. Try it. I'm not going to tread lightly anymore, and I'm not going to hush. I want to know why now, Marceau. Why now are you saying this? So Martell says, you let me and everybody know how slow your wife is. That is when the conversation would have had to stop, because you're disrespecting Tisha yet again. He enjoys disrespecting Tisha. And I don't know why Marceau allows it, but he does. When he says she's slow, you see Tisha wince. Now, Tisha's trying to look unbothered in her phone, but Tisha's bothered by what's being said. She says, I know what he's trying to do. I know what he's trying to do. Marceau has his hand on his wife's thigh and he's looking at her and whatever. And Martell tells Tisha, it's sad that you're accepting this. Marceau says, you don't understand what inseparable is. Tisha says he wishes he had one like me. She kisses him and then says she's going to the restroom. They go back and forth a little bit. Marceau says, you sound pathetic. Martell says, you're making your wife look pathetic. He says, Marceau says, you're making your wife look, oh yeah, that's right, you don't have one. Martell says, no, not Martell says, Martell is like, that's not a big deal that he hasn't have one. So Marceau says, what I need you to understand basically is I'm simply better than you. In every aspect of your life, I'm better than you. And I was like, for me, whether he's currently in court or not, he's right at this point. He is better than him, because he has the one thing that Martell has always wanted, which is a family. And I'm not saying that you have to have a wife and kids in order to be this great person, but for Martell, those are one of the things that have to be on your list, along with the business and the success and the money. And he currently doesn't have any of that. And unlike Marceau is a builder. He can do these things. He doesn't need Martell in order to get it done. He may have needed him at one point, but he doesn't anymore. He tells us that Martell is constantly comparing himself to Marceau, is proof that he may feel inferior to him. At one point, he considered himself to be on top of the world. And because he fell, now he wants to pull me down. I cannot agree more with that statement. It is so true. He wants him to fall too. Martell walks off, and that's how it ends. Y'all let me know what you thought about this one. How do we feel? Team Martell or Team Marceau? Like the video, it helps the channel. If you've been here a few times and you haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? Until next time.